Many of the Anbiya alayhim salatu wasalam were shepherds. Many of the Anbiya alayhim salatu wasalam were laborers. They would do like blacksmiths or the carpenters. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said in the hadith, the nearest meaning, that the best work that someone can do is a work that they have to use their own hands for. That has the most barakah. That the person that earns a living by having to use their own hands. So we see that this was something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed, that these prophets are not just normal, they're not just completely different from mankind. They themselves had occupations, they themselves had to earn money, which is an essential part of life. Now, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he was very learned in the arts of being a shepherd. And why was it that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a shepherd, right? Why was it that he wasn't from a young age? Why was it that he was a shepherd? How come we know later on he became he went a little bit into the business trading world, but why was it that he was a shepherd from a young age? Reason being is because when you are away from the city, when you are away from people, when you are away from that busy, the hustle and the bustle of like the city, right? And you're out in the farmland, you're out in the country, and you're spending the majority of your time. You get a lot of time to think. You get a lot of time to come to do muraqabah, to think about things. At the same time, you are with the nature, right? You're with nature. You're with the animals. You're with farmland. That's why you notice that the more you go outside of the city, the more simpler the people get, right? And you're away from the filth of the city, basically. So you have and when you're constantly around the nature, you constantly have that spiritual connection, right? You build a spiritual connection that you wouldn't have otherwise, right? And this again comes right, and plus it's not it's certain hours of the day that you go and you take care of these animals, but it's not something that is fully kept you occupied that keeps you occupied throughout your day, right? If you notice, the people who have the busiest of schedules, right, always have different meetings, have to go to this meeting, have to go to that meeting, have this appointment, now I have to go and speak to this person. They have a busy schedule throughout the day. Those individuals, they tend to have the harder hearts. It's harder for them to, they don't get to say alhamdulillah as much. They don't get to raise their hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala much. It's just how it is. The people who don't have that, it's easier for a person who is not that busy to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when you are so busy in this dunya, that's what eventually ends up happening. Now even Dawood alayhi salam, right? Dawood alayhi salam and Sulaiman alayhi salam, they were both known to be kings, correct? They were kings of the Bani Israel. But people forget that Dawood was a farmer, alayhi salam. He was a farmer before that. And even when he became a king, he used to do labor from his hands. He used to make helmets from iron, right? He was an ironsmith. So even when he became a king and he got that status, he still would do that manual labor. So and again, what does it do, right? The benefits of being a shepherd. When you're spending that much time with these animals, you start to have a concern for these animals. You're always concerned for these animals, right? You're concerned for their safety. You want to make sure that they're eating well. You want to make sure that they're safe. So that love comes for others, comes basically. At the same time, there's a bravery in it, and there's like there's also a bravery, and there's a fierceness that's part of it. What's that fierceness? That whenever you see a wolf or you see a fox or something that may harm the sheep, you will go out of your way to defend the sheep, right? So this right here is building the basic characteristics that every prophet needs, right? Having a concern for his people, having a concern and a love for his people, always worrying about the well-being of his people. And if there is someone that is jeopardizing that, then opposing that in the fiercest way. This was the way of the prophets. Now moving on, we are going to talk a little bit about just the Fijar wars, right? The Hurub al-Fijar. These were basically wars that happened when the Prophet ﷺ was in his teens, And what happened was these were two big tribes of Arabia, the Quraysh and another tribe of Kinana, who were allies. And then there was a tribe of Hawazin and Ghatafan. Somewhere from the Hawazin and the Ghatafan, they killed someone from the tribes of the Quraysh. And so what happened is that a fight broke out between the two tribes. However, the Quraysh they started to become overpowered, so they retreated back to Mecca, and this was a mistake they made. The Haram, man dakhalahu kana amina, right? They thought that the Hawazin and the Ghatafan would stop fighting them if they retreated back to Mecca. However, they followed them back to Mecca, and the battle continued there. And Rasulullah sallallahu we know he took part in this battle, not fighting wise, but he would hand. He said, "I used to pick the arrows that had fallen, and I would hand them to my uncles to go fire them at the enemy." And it is also mentioned that when Rasulullah sallallahu was around the army of the Quraysh, they would start winning. And when he would walk away or go to take care of some need, then they would start getting overpowered again. So from the barakah of the Prophet ﷺ being there, even though he wasn't a prophet, but he was still chosen to be a prophet. So there are some perks that are going to come with that. There are some blessings that are going to come with that. There are some miracles that are going to come with that. Anyways, then we have, in his early 20s, we have the incident of Hilf al-Fudul, right? Hilf al-Fudul was basically what happened. If you don't have, one thing to remember in the Jahiliyyah era, right? If you didn't live in the land that you were traveling, and you didn't have any allies or any family members, if something happened to you, there was really no one that was going to come and help you out and take revenge for you, right? So in Hilf al-Fudul, what happened over here was that there was a individual from Yemen. Remember how I mentioned the Hajj used to happen back then as well? And the Hajj, it was not just, yes, they used to have the rituals, they had added the paganistic rituals as well, but it used to be a festival as well. So they used to have people from all over the world that used to come, and there used to be a huge market. Perhaps you guys have heard the name of the market of Uqad. I don't know if you guys have heard that. It's a famous market that was in Mecca. The origins of that, it was built during Hajj time actually, and then they kept it going. Basically, this market was it was like an international market. So people from all over the world, or not all over the world, but all over Arabia, the tribes would come, and they would buy and sell. So if somebody had just come from Syria, they'd bring their goods and they'd sell them. If someone had just come from Yemen, they'd sell their goods, and vice versa. Or someone had just come from Persia. So there was a person from Yemen, and he sold some items to As bin Wa'il. As bin Wa'il is one of the chieftains of the Quraysh, of the Banu Sahm, I believe. Because you have to understand, you have the Quraysh and then you have the sub-tribes, the Banu Hashim, the Banu Abdul Manaf, the Banu Makhzum. Because the Quraysh are all related, right? So they all go back to a certain ancestor, but years and years down the road, right? They have different like one brother, like one father had 5, 6, 7 sons. Then he had his sons and his children and his daughters and his grandchildren. So from them, all these tribes come, but they all link back to one ancestor. That's why they come under the umbrella of Quraysh. So what happened was that As bin Wa'il, who was the father of Amr bin al-As, who later became a Sahabi later on, he told him that I'll give you the money once you finish your Hajj rituals. So once he finished his Hajj rituals, he went back to As bin Wa'il, and he basically told him that, okay, now can you give me my money? You told me that once I perform these Hajj rituals, you'll give me the money. And As bin Wa'il refused. And he went to him over and over again, and he refused. He said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. Then, he's a chieftain of Quraysh, right? So, he had, some guy that's not from this area, from a different country, who cares, right? Just get out of here. So then this man went in front of the Kaaba and started pleading for help. No one would help him in Quraysh. Then he went in front of all the people that were there for Hajj. And he started talking about the dhulm that the Quraysh had done. He said, you guys are supposed to be the custodians of this holy land, and you guys are using it to your advantage. So then the leaders of the Quraysh, they were like, okay, we can't let him badmouth us. So then they got together And then they made this Hilf al-Fudul. And the reason, and I'll explain to you why it's called Hilf al-Fudul, but they made this pact where they said that we, from now on, we will always help anybody that comes, and anybody who is wrongfully oppressed in our jurisdiction, no matter who oppressed them, even if it's a Qurayshi, we will oppose that person and we will help the individual that was oppressed. So then, obviously, a lot of them didn't know how to read and write. So what they did is that they brought a huge bucket of like perfume, and they dipped their hands in it, and then they rubbed it on the Kaaba. This was their way of like signing the pact, the deal. And the reason why it's Fadul is because the As bin Wa'il came. He said, "Why are you guys doing something?" He was like, you guys are acting so serious for such a Faduli matter, right? It doesn't. Like, it's just a small matter. You guys are making it, into such a big deal." But that's where the name Hilf al-Fudul comes from. But this is just a little story about that. And then after that we have and the Prophet ﷺ actually said that the Hilf al-Fudul, if I had to honor that treaty again, even though, because this treaty, again, وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ, right? إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. Anything the Prophet ﷺ does is directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So the exact details of that treaty, the Quraysh made those up, right? It's not something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given wahi to the Prophet ﷺ to do. But he said, if someone were to ask me, he said, if I was able to, and if Allah gave me permission to, I would uphold the same treaty till today. So it shows that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's okay if something is noble outside of like something that is done, which is just a normal noble thing, that just because something is a noble cause, and maybe our Muslim brothers and sisters are not part of it, doesn't mean that we shouldn't, speak out for it. For example, like if any like natural disaster that happens anywhere around the world, or anybody that is oppressed in other parts of the world, which they're not Muslims, if we speak up in those times, it'll make us more credible when our own Muslim brothers and sisters are suffering, and it'll make us more credible, and it'll give us more respect when we speak out for our Muslim brothers and sisters. Then now let's fast forward to the marriage to Khadija radiallahu anha. So Khadija radiallahu anha, a little background about her. She was married to two different. She had basically. One of her husbands had died, and she had divorced her first husband. And the reason why she was a big businesswoman, is because she didn't have any children from her second husband, and he didn't have any siblings. So it was a very rare case. Like basically, like she ended up getting all of the. Her second husband was a huge businessman, so she inherited all of the business trade from him. And she was a noble woman from Quraysh. And she used to have a huge caravan that also used to go from Mecca to Syria. So she would hire people, because her being a woman at the time, she could not go and lead a caravan, right? So she would hire individuals to lead her caravan. And what would happen was, they would end up obviously stealing and not, because she would pay them like a percentage basically of all the profit that was earned. So they would end up stealing, and they would end up, not upholding the actual, like, whatever contract she had with them. So a friend of hers told her, "Why don't you hire Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?" She didn't know anything about him, but he used to go and work for her in her markets, right, the markets in Mecca, and he even went and she sent him on a trade mission, and then she saw how trustworthy he was, and she hadn't seen that in any other man. And even though after she had gotten to, her husband had died, she had so many offers, marriage offers, but she didn't accept any of them because she didn't trust anybody, because she felt like anybody that's trying to marry her just wants to take advantage of the wealth that she had. That they're going to take advantage of all the wealth and all the business trade that she has. So when she saw, just cut the story short, she saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she is the one who was interested in marrying the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now here we come to the age of Khadija radiallahu anha. What's the most common and popular age? 40, right? So Ibn Ishaq says 28. And the reason why 40 is, one scholar from the past, he said 40 and it became popular. However, Mustadrak Hakim, who was a hadith collector, he reports that Ibn Ishaq said 28, Ibn Kathir rahimahullah says 30, and many other great historians of our past, scholars of the past, who have a higher status than this individual who said 40. They also said 30, 32. It kind of makes sense. I mean, Rasulullah has 6 children from her, right? So if she was 40, it wouldn't, I mean, this doesn't add up, right? So we're going to say maybe she was around, I guess, 28, 29. Rasulullah was either from the age 23 to 25. There's no, like, for sure age. Like I said, anything that comes before Nabuwah, there's really nothing that is for sure 100% authentic, right? However, we can say that we can comfortably say, due to the credibility of the scholars, especially Ibn Ishaq, who we said is the main scholar of Seerah, that the age of Khadija radiallahu anha was somewhere between 28 to 30, not 40 years old. So Khadija radiallahu anha, well, a couple of things about her. She was the first human the first individual to accept Islam. And when they did the nikah, Abu Talib, he performed the nikah. And the mahr of the Prophet ﷺ, it was it was a few grams. The silver that was given is equivalent to like $300 to $400, something around there. And Khadija radiallahu anha, a couple things about her. She was the first person that accepted Islam. She is the one. Now, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose Khadija radiallahu anha for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Right? Because of the type of woman she was. She was a caretaker. She knew how to manage things. She knew how to be a support system. You know how they say behind every strong man there's a strong woman? You can literally take that over here, right? Khadija radiallahu anha was the right individual to be that support for the day that the Prophet was going to come running and say, I don't know what happened. Right? I don't know what happened. What's going on, right? So, and then another thing about Khadija radiallahu anha is that she was the only wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who Jibreel entered. He only, like whenever Jibreel wanted to do send wahi to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or whenever Jibreel wanted to meet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to speak to him about something, he would never enter the house of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The only house he ever entered was the house of Khadija radiallahu anha. That's the only house that he used to enter. He never entered the house of any other wife. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell Khadija I send my salam upon you. So this is, and this is where the scholars, they give the opinion that Khadija radiallahu anha is she has the highest status out of all of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he always would remember her. And Aisha radiallahu anha herself, she never, she said she never felt threatened or jealousy from any other wife because she knew that she was a favorite of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the only person that she kind of had like this jealousy for was Khadija radiallahu anha, because she knew how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to talk about her. Almost all of his children, except for his son Ibrahim, came from Khadija radiallahu anha. His first son was Qasim, and Qasim actually lived, I think, around till he was the age of 4, I believe. And then he passed away. Then Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulthum, Fatima, Abdullah, and then Ibrahim was from Maria, the Qibtiyya, she was not even a wife of the Prophet. She was a slave of the Prophet. So Khadija radiallahu anha is the only wife of the Prophet ﷺ who has the honor of giving him children, basically. And I mean, subhanAllah, we know that the Prophet ﷺ buried every single child of his except Fatima, right? He buried every single child of his except Fatima. And now the question arises, why was it that Rasulullah ﷺ, none of his sons lived on, right? Imagine, the son of the Prophet ﷺ living on. Why is it like why did that not happen? There's narration of the Prophet ﷺ saying that, and I believe he was talking about Ibrahim. He was talking about one of his sons. He said if one of us he said him by name. He said if he had lived on, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have made him a prophet. but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to end an-nabuwah, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to end the Prophet because He said it's not possible for the son of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to live on in this world and not get nabuwah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to solidify prophethood. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted the end of the prophethood was going to be with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another reason the ulama gave is because we see from the sons of the daughters of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Fatima radiallahu anha, we see how the ummah, how much fitna was caused, how some parts of our ummah, they exalted them so high to a level which even at times higher than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So imagine if it was a direct son of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imagine what would have happened. So there's a few hikmahs regarding that as well. Then we move on to when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was approximately 35 years old, the building of the Kaaba. Now, the Kaaba was destroyed by the famous flood that had happened because there was no irrigation, there were no pipe systems to control the water back then. And what happened was each tribe of Quraysh, now where did they get this is interesting now. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always, this is from the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Romans, they had a very big church in Yemen that got burnt down by the Persians because the Romans and Persians were at war. So there was a huge church that had got burnt down. And then the Caesar of Rome had sent a group of the best engineers with the best equipment, right? Pillars and marble tiles and floor, the flooring, the walls. He had sent them to go to Yemen to rebuild this church. What happened was there was a storm on the way, and they washed up onto the shore of Jeddah. So they washed up onto the shore of Jeddah, and they obviously were like, we're gonna have to go back. We have no idea where we are. We're just gonna go back. So there were some people from Mecca that were there and said that, why don't you sell us your supplies? We're looking to build our house of God. Why don't you come with us to Mecca? We'll also pay you guys. So this state-of-the-art equipment that was supposed to go to the church in Yemen, the way Allah willed it is that He brought it. He used this wind, and they were rerouted, and that equipment was used to build the Kaaba. However, when the Quraysh started building it, each tribe, they had their own area where they were going to build the Kaaba, and they eventually ran out of money. So that's where if you notice, there's a hatim, right? The Kaaba was originally rectangular, and the time of Ibrahim alayhis salam, the foundation of Ibrahim, it was rectangle, and the door of the Kaaba was on the floor, basically on the ground, right? So anybody could enter the Kaaba. The Quraysh, what they did is, because of lack of money, they decided to keep it square, and they raised the door of the Kaaba so only the elites of the Quraysh could enter it, and they could control who enters it, right? And then came the time to put the black stone, the Hajar Aswad, right, in the Kaaba. And there's only one black stone, and there's so many tribes of Quraysh. So the Quraysh were about to go to war with who's going to put the black stone. And this is, again, a Jahili mentality, right? Going to war over such, things that can be easily talked about, things that can be settled in, just a deal. They were ready to go to war. So we have the Banu Hashim, who is the tribe of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then we have the Banu Abdul Manaf, who is the closest, out of the sub-tribes of Quraysh. The Banu Abdul Manaf is the closest tribe to the Banu Hashim when it comes to bloodline, right? They were on one side. And then we have the Banu Makhzum, who is the tribe of Abu Jahl, the tribe of Walid bin Mughira, the tribe of Khalid bin Walid, and then the Banu Umayyah, the tribe of Abu Sufyan, and the tribe of Uthman radiallahu anhu was also from that tribe. So these are the four big tribes of Quraysh. The four big tribes of Quraysh. The Banu Makhzum, Banu Umayyah were together. They were allies together because they were close in relation. The Banu Abdul Manaf and the Banu Hashim were together because they were close in relation. So they got together. The Banu Makhzum, they brought a whole bowl of blood. They dipped their hands in it, and they swore that they're going to fight to the death to put the black stone in the Kaaba. So then Walid ibn Mughira, who was one of the chieftains, one of the main leaders of Quraysh, and he was the head of the Banu Makhzum, he said, "What are we doing?" He said, why don't we just figure out something where we can just avoid this and get this done with. So they said, okay, the next morning, the first person that comes and enters the haram, the Kaaba, we will ask him to give us some type of advice. And so again, who comes? Obviously, who comes? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And everyone was happy with him taking a decision. That shows you that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't have issues with anybody. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his character was so high. He was such a trustworthy individual and likable individual as well. Right? Many times in our community, we have those people that no one wants to go near. Right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was such a likable individual that people that were about to go to war, we have the Banu Abdul Manaf and the Banu Hashim on one side who are his relatives, right? He's from the Banu Hashim. Then you have the Banu Makhzum and the Banu Abdul Manaf and the Banu Umayyah on the other side. They're about to go at it, but both of them are happy with whatever he says. And sadly, the rivalry between Banu Umayyah and Banu Hashim, it went on even after Islam, right? It went on like we see what happened between Ali radiallahu anhu and Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, and then after that, always Banu Umayyah, Banu Umayyah, their Khilafah was solidified, and then the Banu Abbas came. Banu Abbas are the descendants of Abdullah ibn Abbas. They overthrew the Banu Umayyah. So Banu Umayyah and the Banu Hashim were always rivals. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then told them that why don't you guys take out a sheet, put this black rock on Hajar Aswad on the sheet, and then the chieftains from each of these 4 big tribes hold one of the corners of the sheets and take it right in front of the Kaaba, and then I myself will just pick it up and place it. And they all agreed upon that, and that's how the black stone was placed into the Kaaba. A couple things they did again about the Kaaba is that they, like I said, they made the door a bit higher, and they added like a water spout. It's not the same one that's still there, but they added like a water spout so that they don't have to go through that whole flood issue again, where the Kaaba is then destroyed again. And now a little history about the Kaaba. Now remember I told you that the original foundation of the Kaaba was a rectangular foundation, right? And the door was in the bottom. Then the Quraysh, they made a few changes to it, and they lifted the door up. The reason why they made it square is because they didn't have enough money. That's why the Hatim that you guys see, that was like the extra part they weren't able to finish. That is why if you pray Salah inside of the Hatim, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take all of us for Umrah and Hajj, you will it's as if you are praying inside of the Kaaba. Now, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told Aisha radiallahu anha, we're fast forwarding a bit, when Fath Makkah happened, he said that if these people were not new in Islam, I would have raised this Kaaba to the ground, and I would have built it upon the foundation of Ibrahim alayhi salam, right? But he said, because I don't want to cause any fitna between the people, I'm going to keep it on at this like this, the way the Quraysh made it. Abdullah bin Zubayr, when he rebelled against the Umayyads and he took over Makkah, he became the Khalifa in Makkah, his capital was Makkah, he said, I'm going to fulfill the promise of the Prophet ﷺ, and he rebuilt the Kaaba as the rectangular shape, and then he put the door on the ground. Then when the Umayyads came and Hajjaj bin Yusuf, he attacked Makkah because they wanted to get Abdullah bin Zubayr. They actually ended up destroying half of the Kaaba. So when Abdullah bin Zubayr, after he was killed, and that's a story for a different day, the Kaaba was half destroyed because Hajjaj bin Yusuf had ordered his army to fire catapults into Makkah, because that's what Abdullah bin Zubayr was. They rebuilt the Kaaba on the original foundation of Quraysh. So now it went back to the foundation of Abdullah bin Zubayr, brings it back to the foundation of Ibrahim alayhi salam, which this was the wish of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Abdullah bin Zubayr, his qiyas was that, well, people have now already been in Islam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that when the people of Makkah had just accepted Islam. Now it's been a few generations where people have accepted that, so there's going to be no problem. So I'm going to fulfill that promise. But they built it back on the original foundation, and this is because of their hatred for Abdullah bin Zubayr. So they're like, we're going to build it back on the original foundation. Then later on, when the Banu Abbas, the Abbasid Khilafah came, the Khalifa asked, one of the Khalifas, they asked Imam Malik, they said, should we change the Kaaba back to the original foundation of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And then Imam Malik said that this Kaaba is not a toy to be played with. Like anybody just changes it, we need to stop now. Just leave it how it is. And that's why this is the same. The Kaaba obviously it's gone through renovations. It's been rebuilt. It's been revamped. But that's why the design that design that we see today, it's from when the Umayyads they rebuilt it on the foundation of the Quraysh. And inshallah we'll conclude the class for today inshallah, and we'll continue next week inshallah. So,